My name is Kendall Thomas. I'm the Nash Professor of Law at Columbia University in New York City. Critical race theory is a very loose body of thought and ideas that emerged at the end of the 1970s, during the 1980s in US law schools. In many ways, the pioneering scholar in the field was the late Derek Bell, who taught for many years at the Harvard Law School, was the dean at University of Oregon Law School, and ended his career at New York University. And Professor Bell, whose death, as it happens, we're marking even as I speak. He died on October 5th, 2011, wrote a series of very important articles which raised in the legal academy and among law professors for the first time a set of questions that squarely address the limits of the civil rights paradigm and the understanding of racial equality that had governed the way not only law professors, but legal advocates and courts talked about the problem of racial justice in the United States. In an important article, he introduced the notion of interest convergence. And the heart of that argument was that, contrary to the received view that there had been a consensus, a moral consensus, about the wrongs of Jim Crow segregation, in fact, the best explanation for important decisions such as the 1954 Supreme Court decision in Brown versus the Board of Education invalidating race-based segregation in public schools was not that those decisions reflected a commitment to ideals of racial justice or a moral consensus about the wrongs of racism, but rather represented a convergence of interests among powerful white elites and the black middle class, that segregation and Jim Crow apartheid was not in the interests of the black middle class, nor in the interests of white elites. That was a pioneering article, which, along with an article that I read in law school by the late Charles L. Black on the lawfulness of Brown and the other segregation decisions, really shaped my critical understanding of the limits of the formal equality paradigm. And the problem that critical race theory sets out to address is why, notwithstanding the fact that we have formal constitutional equality enshrined in our constitutional jurisprudence, that is, in the case law of the Supreme Court, but also in federal anti-discrimination law and in state anti-discrimination law, we have seen the tragic persistence of racial disadvantage, racial inequality, and racial injustice. Just recently, the nation's attention has been called to the fact that racial segregation, de facto Jim Crow, if you will, is a reality all over the country in public schools. And there have been lawsuits in Michigan and in Rhode Island and in New Jersey, which have raised constitutional claims about the extent to which students of color in particular are being denied the right to a basic education that would equip them to exercise their responsibilities as citizens in the United States, which was the original vision of the justification offered by the Supreme Court in Brown. So critical race theory is an attempt through scholarship to really make good on the unfulfilled promises of American democracy and to illustrate the ways in which a commitment to enlarging American democracy to include all of we the people will require continued vigilance and a commitment to rethinking the limits of the civil rights paradigm and the notion that formal equality is going to address the continuing challenge of colorblind racism in the United States.